Okay, so we have half the puzzle solved. We know that Malaysian Flight 370 has crashed into the Indian Ocean. We know there's no hope for survivors. What we don't know is why. We still don't know why. Now, I've been looking through the scientific reports. There is no explanation yet why it was thousands of kilometres off course. What happened? We'll get some expert advice on that through the morning. There's also a suggestion now that what's happened in the past few days will change aviation forever. A totally unprecedented system has been used to identify where the aircraft is. It is in what they call the southern corridor of the likely area, at the end of that southern corridor, a couple of thousand kilometres off Perth. And there is now no hope. Sadly, no hope of survivors. But as I said, half the puzzle is solved. And the man who solved it, I spoke to only a few moments ago. His company solved it. His name is David Coiley. He's vice president of a London-based company called Inmarsat. They've done the work that has led to the conclusion and led to the abandonment of hope. I spoke to David Coiley a few minutes ago. He's extremely busy. The whole world wants to talk to him. And I said to him, in fact, the whole world wants to know, how did you do this?
Basically, Inmarsat used the available satellite data that was almost like the sort of standby mode data that we use just to keep a check on those systems that require access to our network. In the absence of any other communications information, we use this, and over time we're able to interpolate the scant information that we had, run some models, and validate that against some other aircraft data, and came up with something that led to a more accurate picture of where the airplane might be.
Is that a unique system that you're using? The way you describe it seems simple, but is it a unique method?
It is a unique method. It's never been used before. Our network, Inmarsat Systems, installed an airplane to let people communicate, send voice and ACARS, text message and other data. In this case, there is no other communications traffic off the airplane, so we just used our signalling or keep alive messages on the network that just check that the airplane is still out there. And in the absence of any other sort of data, we just looked very hard at that. We've got some very clever people that just looked at it, analysed it, dissected it more and more, ran some modelling, checked it against some other folks to check that the information was valid, and ultimately came to a conclusion that led the search in a particular direction.
Is this the so-called pings that are sent every hour? Is that what you're working with?
It is essentially, yes, and the pings are just like a heartbeat on our network, just to check that any system is still out there. If we haven't seen any communications activity to or from a particular system on an hour, every hour after the last activity, we'll send a handshake, or what we call a polling signal, just to check that the system is still out there, that it's switched on, and it may require access to our network. All it is a simple acknowledgement that the airplane or the system is still out there. In the case, that's all we had to go on. So we had to look very hard indeed at what more we could learn from that sort of information.
So where precisely is the plane? Can you say where it is precisely?
No, we can't. All we have on our network is these series of pings that showed the last time it was on our network. So all the ping does is just acknowledge that at that instant it was at a particular relationship to our satellites. That gives very limited information indeed, but several of these pings, again, in the absence of any other data whatsoever, we can start interpolating where the airplane may have got to. But all we have is, I think, at 0811, we had the last of these ping acknowledgements from the airplane. The pings are sent from the ground to the airplane, and the airplane acknowledges them with a simple confirmation that it's there. We get a snapshot at that time, and that just gives us the last point at which the airplane was, simply in relation to the satellite, where the airplane was in relation to the satellite, a heading and a distance from the satellite, and from that we can learn where it was, and then with the fuel load that we understand was on the plane at that time, and some modelling around what the fuel burn may have been based on airplane speeds or various models of airplane speeds, we could work out a range of where the airplane could be following that point, assuming it maintained a given direction, a given heading, which was based on the extrapolation of data points up to that point.
So extrapolating all that, what is the area we are looking at now?
It's the area at the southern end of the southern corridor that we'd identified to the investigators some days ago. So it's a point from the last ping acknowledgement that we received at 0811.
Okay, and how big would that area be?
I'm not familiar with the parameters that the search activities are working to. In particular, the ocean currents, winds, and things like that will modify that data over the data point that Inmarsat was able to provide to the investigators.
But on the basis of this and the figures you've extrapolated, there is no hope that that aircraft is anywhere other than in the Indian Ocean.
Based on the information that we gave, we have had that information validated. It was one of the original reasons we approached the UK Air Accident Investigation Branch to help. We did our sums. The data led us to certain conclusions, and we went to a couple of entities who were familiar with our network, with our system, and the Air Accident Investigation Branch in the UK to help validate that data, and that's what we've been doing since. We didn't want to jump to any conclusions, and the data does lead to the conclusions that the investigating team have reached today.
So there's no hope?
Unfortunately, it looks like the airplane did take that southerly track.
Does your information show at what height it was travelling towards the end?
No, it doesn't. It's all the data that we have is working out information based on the relationship to the airplane at that instant of the ping acknowledgement in relation to our satellite, which is in geostationary orbit over the Indian Ocean. We can work a lot out to pretty good details of accuracy, but we don't get information on the actual position of the airplane itself or its altitude. But we can use mathematics and very sophisticated modelling to give an indication of where the airplane was, where the heading was as soon as we got more points. But it doesn't give an accurate view of altitude of the airplane itself, other than its relation to our satellite.
In a sense, this is really half the puzzle, isn't it? We've got an idea where the aircraft's gone down, but why is it thousands of kilometres off course?
And our system can give no indication of that whatsoever. We're just using the scant information that our system is able to provide to give an indication of where it was and where it may be heading to narrow down the search, but we don't know any of the answers to the questions that are baffling everyone.
Mr. Coiley, will what you've done here, will it change the nature of what's done in the future in aviation?
I absolutely think so, yes. We've learnt an awful lot over the last few weeks, and it does indicate that more frequent, more accurate position reporting and other ways of downlinking data to the ground or allowing the ground to communicate with aircraft seems to be the way ahead. And we know that Inmarsat systems are able to support that type of activity. I
know you're extremely busy. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking to us. Bye-bye. Mr. David Coiley, who is the Vice President of Aviation at Inmarsat, which is the company which has finally, tragically, tracked where the aircraft is likely to be. David Coiley speaking to us from the United Kingdom.